Hello, I'm Alexandra Lippman, and I'll be talking about technologies of funk, sampling, circulation, and sonic experimentation in Rio de Janeiro. In the 1970s, during the Black Rio movement, DJs from Mobile Sound System, boasting names like Soul Grand Prix, Black Power, and Archie Negra, spun funky soul and R&B records smuggled from the United States. Beginning in the 1980s, DJs began playing freestyle, Miami bass, and electro. These sound system parties, baile funk, or funk dances, drew thousands of youth to dance in the working-class suburbs. Many considered DJ Malboro's album Funk Brazil to be the first funky carioca or Rio funk recording because it features artists rapping in Portuguese over Miami bass, freestyle, and electro instrumentals sampled from records. Funky carioca emerged through DJs, MCs, and fans creatively appropriating African American and Latinx dance musics. In the 2000s, with the democratized access to music studio equipment and computers, young male producers, many from the favelas, began producing and sampling instruments inspired by Afro-Brazilian percussion called tamborzão, big drum. Through dancing, singing, and listening to music at baile funk, socioeconomically marginalized youth participate in an Afro-diasporic sonic culture linking Miami, New York, and Los Angeles to Rio. Funk's production and circulation often flaunts copyright. Like hip-hop, funky carioca emerged as a genre because musicians sampled records to create montages from loops of sound. During the 1980s, the so-called Voltmix rhythm, the 1987 B-side instrumental track 808 Volt Mix by Los Angeles DJ Battery Brain, was sampled in countless tracks. Voltmix is itself more than one song. It samples 28 soul, funk, disco, and hip-hop records. This is what it sounds like. Beginning in 1999, DJs' references began to shift towards more Afro-Brazilian sounds, like samba, candomblé drumming, and capoeira, and funky's dominant rhythm became tamborzão, big drum, a locally and collaboratively produced rhythm. Throughout, funky producers have created tracks through a cut-and-paste approach using loops. Over USB sticks, Microsoft Messenger, or WhatsApp, DJs, MCs, and producers have shared loops which are diverse samples of Afro-Brazilian drums, popular funk lyrics, news reports, gunshots from old westerns with their friends. Gift exchanges were gendered male, and loop libraries reflected and were built through relationships of reciprocity. And many of the songs use this rhythm now, which is called tamborzão. Musicians divided funky by technological generations. DJ Rafael Pitbull put it, funky migrated from the LP to the cassette tape to the mini disc to the computer, and now we have quote-unquote DJ Walmart, young boys who buy cheap computers in installments. But the MPC has always been important. In 1986, anthropologist Hermano Viana gave his primary interlocutor, DJ Malboro, an MPC, a music production center or drum machine. Malboro recalled how Viana's advisor remarked on the gift, quote, "It's like giving a rifle to an indigenous chief," end quote. The drum machine gave the DJ a tool for sonic domination to control the dance floor. The MPC is a sampling machine, which breaks up the apparent wholeness of music recording. The DJ triggers samples for many songs at once, drumming out loops, lyrics, and voices. Live montagens, mixed samples of Miami bass, the film Rocky, gunshots from spaghetti westerns, and Afro-Brazilian drum rhythms. Songs are crammed with references, and through mixing, DJs create relationships between their public within a diaspora. DJ Malboro credited the birth of funky carioca to the gifted drum machine. When I programmed the drum machine with my sound for a baile that night, I programmed history. Yet, dialogic tension between intellectual property and piracy influence media ecologies and the channels available for both creation and consumption. Funky's localized insider understandings of norms of authorship and permissible usage, which would be considered piracy to outsiders, limited its circulation. Yet, despite contradictions between copyright and funk's mode of production and circulation, musicians imagined that copyright could protect them if more musicians knew their copyrights. Veteran musicians attributed MC's loss of their copyrights to their being young, uneducated kids who were often preto, pobre e favelado, black, poor, and from the favela. Yet, despite musicians' complaints about the lack of properly functioning copyright to protect authors, authorship and artist names remained important. Names, their erasure or their additions to songs play important roles in the collaborative circulation of funky throughout the genre's history. Exchanges frequently reproduced hierarchies. Mega impresarios and famed DJs as patrons or potential patrons for MCs accumulated tribute, payola, and attribution for songs, while MCs often saw their own names disappear from their music. And I will focus on authorship and naming and the circulation of funky, from carimbo, or stamp, which is a practice of stamping DJs who are not involved in production's names onto one's songs, and the exchange of authorless loops, or segments of songs. In a closet-sized music studio, which he referred to as a, quote, laboratory for experiments, Chacal opened Mano Teco's song with Sony Acid Pro 6. Teco took out a handwritten list of around 40 DJs' names and began to sing their names into the microphone. Teco had found the DJs mostly through Orkut and Microsoft Messenger. Chacal recorded Teco singing the carimbo, or stamp, of the DJs' names for Teco's new song, Minha Conduta, My Conduct. Teco had saved up to pay legendary hitmakers Hobson and Leandro to produce his song. As several MCs asserted, the name Hobson and Leandro opens up doors. For about 2 hours, the musicians recorded cleverly placed carimbos that didn't drastically alter the song. He thus transformed the song into a tribute to the DJ it was sent to. Chacal cut and pasted the carimbo into the original song, applied filters, added reverb, and tweaked it until the cheaply placed carimbo blended with the original, expensively produced and mastered song. Thus, Chacal created 40 personalized stamped versions of an expensively produced song in his tiny music laboratory. At home, Teco would email each DJ his individualized song stamped with their name. With the rise of CD and digital piracy and the end of album sales, DJs and MCs began promoting themselves and their music through other means. Putting carimbo of other DJs or sound systems, radio stations, or even websites onto their song facilitated its traveling through radio airwaves and to street dances. Naming creates links between the MC and whoever or whatever she stamped into her songs. Carimbo appealed to what Salins calls generalized reciprocity by inviting DJs to repay MC's gift of a personalized song. And in layering carimbo into their songs, musicians create a network of authors. Instead of attributing authorship to the MC, authorship was attributed to its destination through dedications to desired patrons. The signature effects extend authorship to destination rather than origination. Similarly, carimbo's tribute was intended to facilitate the voyage of songs to the ears of the public. And carimbo appeared in other places as well, such as a popular site for downloading funky carioca, which MCs actually paid to be hosted on unless they were friends with the founder of the website, and they would put their own stamp onto each song, which sounded like this.
Funkneurótico.net Funkneurótico.net O portal do funk é aqui!
And occasionally some radio DJs were shamed for downloading music from Funky Neurótico and having that carimbo kind of out them when it should have been their name that the MC shouted out. In the loop, authorless sounds. As the drum machine or MPC gained traction to become the most respected instrument in funky, it began to shape the aesthetics and production of music. Pontos, or seconds or microsecond long samples and loops used by the MPC, redefined funky's sound. On the MPC, the DJ cannot simply play a full-length song and then mix it into the next. Instead, DJs perform songs on MPCs by hitting pads to trigger samples such as beatbox rhythms, isolated words, sighs, and gunshots. The loop became important in the instrumental production and live performance of funky. And when I was doing my field work, the voice of Mr. Catra doing a beatbox was the most popular loop that would appear in most songs. And this kind of creates a network of friends who treated loops as a common resource belonging to funk producers and DJs. DJs created their own loops and modified other loops or songs on their PCs and produced songs from their libraries of loops. Many MCs assembled collages of loops to create instrumental tracks for their vocals. A musician's ability to produce funky relied on his being connected within a network of other DJs who shared loops. And this shows you how the MPC is used. Loops traveled through and created networks of friendship. DJs and producers said they acquired all their pontos through their amigos, their friends. The exchange of loops recalls Marshall Sahlins' quotation, "If friends make gifts, gifts makes friends," and the material flow underwrites or initiates social relations. As they gave and received loops over MSN or WhatsApp, funk musicians invited and nurtured friendships. Unlike the naming of carimbo, however, DJs did not attach names to loops which they had produced, edited, or shared. Instead, they titled loops with the names of the instrument, the song it sampled, or sometimes with the name of the MC whose voice was recorded. One DJ named Alex MPC, reacted in surprise when I asked if they titled pontos with their own names. No, not unless it's really, really foda, fucked. In funky, foda usually meant great. Similarly, many loops were labeled with adjectives symbolizing and signaling potency and power. Atabaki Bolado Macumba 5, Mad Macumba Atabaki 5, or Atabaki Bolado 23, Mad Atabaki 23, or Beach Bravo 2010, Big Brave Beatbox 2010. These titles referred to instruments, the atabaki, an Afro-Brazilian rope tension drum, also used in candomblé or beatbox. And furthermore, because funky is primarily a dance music, the intensity promised by the loop matters. During my fieldwork between 2008 and the Olympics in 2016, the low growl of Mr. Catra, an extravagant MC known for living with 4 wives, who also had his own reality TV show, his beatboxing tamborzão, the big drum rhythm, coursed through thousands of songs. While mostly unnamed fans recognized Catra's presence by the, quote, grain of the voice, Catra's gruff beatbox imitating a drum machine, imitating candomblé drum rhythms, was sent fragmented and tweaked, looped, and then copied through computer networks in Rio's working-class suburbs and favelas. Outsiders to funky accused the genre of sounding very repetitive, and many international DJs grew bored with how funky, as one New York DJ told me, quote, always sounded the same. Indeed, down to the loops, which recirculate in and comprise funky's production, songs were related. This kinship through loops linked people, instruments, technology, rhythms, friendships, and reputations. While funky artists advanced their or others' fame through circulating their name along with songs, loops circulated anonymously within a network of networked commons bounded by friendship. Funky songs come into existence through exchanges, gifts, payola, appropriation, and copying within a network. Exchanges create ties of reciprocity which both create opportunities to build one's name and to reaffirm the names of those in positions of power. As social and economic forces, patronage and the importance of having a recognizable name have shaped exchanges. By recording and stamping names into songs, musicians paid tribute to and gave attribution to DJs, radio stations, and sound systems. MCs initiated a call and response with those whom they hoped would respond by playing their songs. If the MC helps the DJ build his name or her name, in the case of Grazi, who was the one female DJ at the time of my research, by playing their song, the MC might also become transformed into a known person, maybe even a big name. In economies of funky, there were continual conversions between music, names, voices, favors, and money. A rhythm, a ponto, a voice, replicating over and over, suggest how sounds, via their interpersonal and technical relationships, possess agency. This agency becomes most apparent when a song compels thousands to dance for hours throughout the night until sunrise.